All right, so today we're going to dive into ETH 2.0, take a lot harder look at where Ethereum is going, also break down some of the sentiment of what's happening within the market right now around Ethereum, look at a lot of different moves that are really making up not only the strategy, but also what could be the future of ETH in the near and long term. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to TechPath. Let's dive into it today. And that is Ethereum 2.0 and really kind of the evolution of proof of stake and proof of work. Really proof of work as to where Ethereum has been really since its inception, and the evolution of what Ethereum is trying to do to go to proof of stake, which obviously addresses a lot of the ESG, environmental issues that so many tokens face. And in many cases, that's one of the bigger reasons, but not necessarily all the reasons why ETH 2.0 needs to be able to be the next evolution. A lot of this comes around speed, transaction quality, the amount of smart contract evolutions that we'll see within the varieties of ETH 2.0, and just the number of dApps that, of course, are associated with that and what that might look like. If you look at Ethereum 2.0, the beacon chain is really kind of the name of how this transition is going to take place. And it is already in place. We're starting to see a little bit of the movement now. Some people are, including Lubin, talks a little bit about Q2 as being kind of the point of opportunity here for when this occurs. But what essentially is happening right now is a lot of this is occurring through a variety of different validators and also a few different processes to really kind of start the movement toward ETH 2.0. And I want to get into a couple of things here of what the beacon chain can do. Think of the beacon chain as like a big lighthouse. This is perfect for the article. Rising above a blue sea of transaction data. It's constantly scanning and then validating, collecting votes, and then doling out rewards, validators, all that good stuff. But essentially, it will look out and really kind of help create a lot more security and also a lot more ability to really kind of get the best value for what's happening in these smart contracts. So I think that, along with some of their other aspects to it, the beacon chain doesn't change Ethereum that you use today. This is I think a misnomer that a lot of people assume that there's going to be like an ETH 2.0 token. That's not necessarily the case. You're still going to send ETH to a friend using the same kind of MetaMask or Uniswap that you have today. It's the exact same token. And in fact, even if ETH is in your wallet today, when proof of stake becomes reality, those tokens don't change. None of that really changes. It's just a complete flip of the ecosystem kind of moving in. So it's going to reform the consensus model from proof of work to proof of stake. The beacon chain also now alive, and at the time of writing, this was just here this week, 20 epochs. One epoch is 6.4 minutes long, and an epoch contains 32 randomly assigned validators. Mainly those are the validators that are doing the computational work for proof of stake to essentially fill out the block, which essentially creates an Ethereum token. The beacon chain also is coordinated mechanism of the new network responsible for creating new blocks, making all those blocks valid, and then rewarding these validators with ETH for keeping the network secure. So this is kind of where the proof of stake takes over the proof of work, which has been miners in the past. And they're using computational mathematics to essentially solve a solution or a problem to create an ETH token, just like Bitcoin is mined on proof of stake. Proof of work, but proof of stake starts to go into validators that essentially help support that ecosystem. So that essentially is a breakdown of what it is. Now, one of the things that is kind of interesting, this is I think a really good newsletter to follow. It's one that I look at occasionally. They do a lot of real detailed deep dives on Ethereum. If you are into technology and you want to dive into it, just go over to hackmd.io, get into the ETH newsletter. It talks a lot about where and what it's looking like, the merge, of course, when it's going to happen. Everybody is pointing to around Q2, and this is a little bit of a note here on testing the merge. This is an in-depth introduction to the Kiln testnet. This has been something that has been in the process of what we'll see actually take place. Some are getting started, guides already, so already emerging. And just a few below, slight note of caution, unless you're super eager, it's worth waiting a couple of days until your favorite client has been made to release on the Kiln parameters. So basically what I'm saying is think of this kind of like as the alpha phase of any rollout of a software. If you are doing something with it, most likely it's going to break or you're going to find a lot of problems with it. and then you see the beta version, which is a little bit more, consumer ready, and then you have wide release, and that's kind of what we're dealing with in the process going up to ETH 2.0. The other thing that is interesting is the whole idea around sharding, and sharding is really kind of the component. I want to kind of explain how sharding works and also why it's important to ETH 2.0. In all blockchain protocols, each node stores the entire state or all account balances. That's basically why blockchain is so unique and different, all processes, etc. This provides a large security, but also limits scalability. And this is where it gets into the scenario of either slow transactions, which is why sharding can help to create, think of that in unison, additional transactions. Almost, and we talked about this on the show before with several different people, of how sharding can really help amplify what ETH can do in terms of transaction speeds and also just sheer volume. And I think that's going to be the key when you look at what they're trying to do and you look at the Trilemma, which is the planetary scale, high throughput, high capacity, low latency, fully decentralized, anyone can join as a validator, and then consistent. This is going to be everybody's the same, and it makes it a perfect ecosystem. This is, I think, Vitalik Buterin's, his mark on humanity is really creating what this trilemma is trying to solve. If this is successful, and we believe that it will be, and it's really just a problem that can be solved over time. It's just a matter of, I think there's a lot of people, obviously, because ETH is so heavily used across the ecosystems, a lot of people pushing for this. Now, how does this play into what the price of ETH is? What would the price of ETH be if you're investing in ETH and maybe you're not necessarily staking it, maybe you're looking at just pure and simple parking ETH and getting a little bit of rewards, or you're just looking at the token itself and you're holding it for gains. Any one of those strategies are fine. There's no problem, wrong or right for each one of those. It just depends on you. One thing though to watch in all of these aspects is really how big money moves. And if you look at this article, nearly 6 billion in ETH burned as Ethereum 2.0 edges closer. This gets to the point of course, weaning off really the miners of what's going to happen here. But Ethereum's burn mechanism's hotter than ever. Crypto's second largest network officially dumped 2 million. You can watch the burn. This is kind of an interesting dashboard. But essentially that value in dollar terms, that's 5.8 billion removed from circulation. That's how they're slowly starting to burn those tokens to eliminate the circulation to handle the swap over to ETH 2.0. This is a big challenge, I think. It's also a monster undertaking by the developers. All of the apps and dApps that really run within the ETH ecosystem, all of those are being affected. So I think it's a very, I wouldn't say it's almost like a dance. There's a lot of things that have to happen that are working, kind of like flying a plane and fixing it too. All of those things are going on right now as we talk about what ETH2 is doing in terms of being able to make it into the 2.0 flip. So a lot happening. A couple other articles here I thought was interesting. This was an article on ETH 2.0 coming. This is going to obviously lay to rest the concerns around energy and just the whole ESG side of things. I think this is a big factor, but also at the same time, people I don't know that they truly understand the capacity of what this may have on the overall marketplace. And I think a lot of people look at this and think, well, is this really going to change anything with Ethereum? Yes, it is, because Ethereum, remember, using gas fees, which we'll see come down, also the issue of Ethereum just becoming such a highly used asset and token, and then you have just the ecosystem itself that creates such a massive move into the blockchain. This has to be really kind of the solution of choice, and I think that was something obviously people saw the writing on the wall back in 2019 and 2020, which essentially was when the birth of ETH 2.0 really started. So the mechanics of this transition led Ethereum Foundation in January to rebrand to ETH 2.0 name in favor of the consensus layer. This was based on what Lubin was talking about. The beacon chain also isn't executing real transactions right now. All this is just really a test net, so to speak, that really starts laying the groundwork for how Ethereum's shift from its current model is going to jump over to its full model of proof of work. So lots of cool stuff happening. Obviously, we've seen the burn and all of that paying out. Lots of news too, because I want to get into what traders are talking about here. Traders are betting on ETH staking after the ETH 2.0 upgrade. Now, some people see this as a good thing. Some people also see this as we're just going to see so much activity that the opportunities are going to get broader and much more competitive. That will be the question of how competitive do these opportunities get within Ethereum, and could we see a lot more, maybe better deals in terms of staking your Ethereum? And if you look right now, Ether staking yields are likely to be in the range of 10 to 15%. Following the 2.0, this is one trader that's really kind of focused in on this. Very bullish for Ether this summer, as Ether staking would offer returns better than real or inflation or adjusted yields. This kind of goes back to what a lot of people are looking at right now in terms of using some of these really solid assets that don't have tremendous volatility and that are highly sought after, such as Ethereum, Bitcoin. There's a handful of others, and how you can really maximize on top of those. Many people are looking at high yield capacitors. Some people are looking at the staking model, and then some people are looking at ways to just park and get interest, or APY. A lot of different angles on this, but I think with staking, this could be one of the key things that really drives a lot of interest in Ethereum after 2.0. And when the 2.0 occurs, we're already going to see a certain amount of, I don't know if it would be FOMO, but we will see a lot of movement. And I think and this will be the big question, is whether or not ETH, when 2.0 happens, do we see a flip of Ethereum and Bitcoin? This is something that people have talked about. We talked about it all last year. Of course, this year I think is a little bit different because of the fact that we've started to see real scenarios happen within the Beacon chain that people can actually see the potential of a timeline that's going to be hit. So lots definitely happening here. This was another little note right here. This was one of the ETH devs, and we finalized, but it seems there's also a client who isn't producing blocks consistently. The network is stable, with 2/3 of the validator correctly finalizing. These are the kind of things that when you see late dev work, and this is the kind of testing that requires even more testing, is as we start to see the validators really come together as, that whole initiated layer of what and how a token is going to be essentially ran. All of this has to be in place before all this occurs. And I think the fact that they're showing and sharing so much of this out on the open web, I think is a really good sign for Ethereum. So very cool stuff. A couple other notes here. Stakers have locked up over 2 million ETH, which is valued over 25 billion. At that time, ETH 2.0 deposit contracts are locked. You also have a couple other things. ETH gained 6.2% over the past 24 hours, which we've watched as the merge was deployed on the Kiln. And then tokens also have exchanged hands over 2640 at time of writing, so now 2700. So again, good movement on the token. Lots definitely happening in the way of where it's happening or heading. I want to get over to staking, because this is another thing that we will continue to see. And like I said, competitiveness is going to be the factor here. And what you see here is the stake your ETH on to become an ETH validator. That, I think, is going to start to really create a lot of more awareness around ETH2, and I think just only continue to build on the overall ecosystem of where Ethereum is going. Because I think that is the bigger question for a lot of people in the short time, is what is ETH2 going to look like on the other side? Is it going to continue to grow? Will we continue to see it supporting all the dApps and even more growth? Or will we see it compare up to other layer ones? Now, there's a lot of layer ones that are competing, I wouldn't say competing, but trying to position for a place at the table. And I think that will be the question after ETH 2.0 comes. Which one of those layer ones are really going to start to fly? Or do we see ETH take all the air out of the room? That'll be the big question to kind of take a look at. If you look at crypto fees, this is a good example. This is where it compares, and this is on a 7-day. Let me run to let's stay with 7-day. And you can kind of see a comparison here of just the volume of Ethereum fees that in comparison to Avalanche fees day by day. You can kind of see all the way back here. This is January, and then flowing down, obviously down because of the trend down in market. But you can kind of see there's 12, right there. It's 12 million versus 719,000, This is the daily fee for March 17th. And if you go right here to this week, March 19th, 12 million. But if you look back up here at the high, which was back in January when ETH was trading a lot higher, 56 million versus 320,000. But Avalanche has really started to pick up a lot of steam here recently, and you can kind of see it growing in itself. So this will be interesting to compare a lot of the layer ones, because there will be some winners in other layer ones that are going to be able to continue to see. I don't think ETH is the layer one killer of all. Now, could it be something that really starts to become the dominant player? Sure, of course, it could be because of the dApps and also just the ecosystems that it supports. So a lot could be happening there, but I still believe that we are going to see a lot in the way of kind of the future. One of the things that makes Ethereum 2.0 such a unique proposition, especially from the compact or the smart contract side of things, is this thing what they call Ethereum is Turing complete. Now, Turing complete, and this, let me kind of highlight what they're talking about here. It essentially means you can write programs, contracts, and for the most part, solve any reasonable computational program. Now, Turing is like the Turing Award, the scientific award. This is a pretty big deal for a platform to be Turing complete. And I think those are the kind of things that 2.0 really solves in terms of longer logarithmic problems that blockchain could face as we see mass adoption. And I want you to put your head around that for a second, because this is very important. Remember right now, everybody here watching this show, you're drinking the Kool-Aid, all right? This is something that you're either already crypto curious, you're already all in on crypto, you've been owning it for years, or you are one of those people that are starting to see the light on where traditional finance is failing you and you're seeing a potential future. But to be able to see the masses come in, even just 1% of the world's wealth, to come into cryptocurrency, because that would essentially be around 200 trillion. And you have to think about this. Right now, Bitcoin and the crypto markets are just barely 2 trillion. The opportunity here of scalability is massive. So for something to really handle the computational load of that kind of adoption layer, imagine if everybody was adopting Ethereum at a rate in which, we were seeing TikTok being adopted or other, social media platforms. The amount of load, and I always think about Twitter back in the fail whale days, it was that kind of scenario. You don't want that kind of scenario happening. So I think the fact that they have really taken the effort to really build on this platform this way is pretty impressive. The other thing that I want to talk to is 26 billion worth of ETH now staked in Ethereum 2.0 deposit contract. This is coming from Glassnode. Again, this just, to me, is a very bullish position right here. According to Etherscan, there are now 10 million staked Ether locked onto the contract worth of 26 billion. That's huge. So it looks to solve the network scalability issues. Obviously, we're shifting over all of this, but the fact that we're going to see 100,000 transactions per second, I mean, literally, we don't need that right now. Even the current layer of TPS that's required for Visa, MasterCard, and American Express, I think altogether may not hit 100,000. So, well, maybe together they are. But the aspect of potential growth here is pretty staggering of adoption, considering that almost every person on the Western fronts carry credit cards. Now, remember, you have the blockchain moving out, which is why I think other layer ones are going to become very important in that companion role with Ethereum. We may see some partnerships coming down the road as well. So definitely a lot happening. I also want to thank our partner today, and that, of course, is FTX. They've got some recent news coming out, which is investing 100 million in a banking app, Dave, which is forming a partnership for crypto payments. And I think with Sam Bankman-Fried, you see a lot of movement in the space for FTX. And I just look at FTX as a different kind of exchange. One, they have started to really move into the space of supporting the crypto community in big ways in terms of dApp development, game development, NFTs. We're starting to see a lot of action in that space. And then if you look at some other things that they've got moving on, they've got their March giveaway happening this month. You're still not too late for it. So just jump over to their Twitter account. You can learn a lot more about their new NFT giveaway for March. Very easy to join and very easy to participate. Some other things that are happening with them is they have proposed the first real-time derivatives platform. Let me kind of zoom up on this one right here because it's pretty cool. It's going to be a derivatives margining system in the US, so you'll be able to do 24/7 margin trading, 24/7 assets, all starting with crypto. This is all CFTC opened up for the proposal of public comment. So this is going to happen. I think this is one of those things that, again, just solidifies the opportunity to make FTX the exchange of choice. The other thing, of course, is you get great fees, a lot lower cost in terms of your trade. So make sure and use our link below to learn more about FTX. You're going to love it. All right, let's get into the wrap up here around ETH and the flippening. When will Ethereum overtake Bitcoin? Ethereum's market value passing up Bitcoin may not be a matter of, but when. And this, of course, is a lot of people looking at this through a predictive model that has really kind of been flowing into the community and in theory. Not that it's that important, but if you look at ETH being potentially the default mechanism for payments around the globe in the next decade, if you think 2030, 2032, could Ethereum be in that position to where every transaction or most transactions that you run on a daily, day-in basis are done through some sort of ETH protocol? If that is the case, easily will we see the ramp up of where ETH is going to roll out into, even with Bitcoin continuing to be pretty much one of the alpha trading tokens out there. I think the opportunity here for ETH is really big to kind of move into that space as the #1 spot. At this time, market value, $347 billion, about 45% of Bitcoin at $779 billion. To assess the probability at the time frame, ETH's market value exceeding the Bitcoins, referred as the flippening. They're looking at both protocols factors that are really kind of underlying a historical market performance, which essentially what they say in the article here is that 2.0 will have a big factor in this, and the potential here, of course, is mass adoption. The key here is breakaway velocity. Breakaway velocity is when could ETH break away from Bitcoin and start to move separately as a standalone. ETH 2.0, because of its dominance and also because of its newfound evolution, this could be the period of time that it really could happen. So lots happening around innovation and kind of just how history supports, but their thoughts are that it's definitely going to be here and it's not very long before it happens. All right, let's get into another one here, which is, if you guys have been following ApeCoin, ApeCoin, of course, surpasses AAVE to become the most traded crypto for the largest ETH investors. And again, this goes back to how and why we're seeing so much activity within the Ethereum network is just because of the innovation that's happening in these dApps that surround the Ethereum network. So again, Ape is one of those that does the same exact thing. So definitely a lot happening, I think, in terms of just where it's going and what it could be doing in the near future. And I know you guys are curious. All right, well, what does all this mean, Paul? This obviously is bullish. That's the clear track. The question is, do we see ETH on its track right now? Because it is starting to move. And are we going to see ETH start to take its track into a position where it's leading up to 2.0 in Q2? Because there are people that are leaning in on Q2. We're about ready to break into Q2 here in a couple of weeks. This could happen in the next 30, 60, or 90 days. So this, along with other aspects that are really kind of pointing in this direction, this is a very interesting highlight right here, which is Grayscale's new fund focusing on Ethereum competitors. Now, why are they focusing on competitors? This goes back to my point, is that as we see the potential for ETH, because remember, with ETH and it's solving all the problems that it had prior to the ETH2 upgrade, we're going to see mass adoption and even more innovation starting. And remember, you're also going to see DeFi starting to play into this, traditional finance starting to play in this in terms of banking. Banking will start to move into aspects to where ETH might even be something where we could see it into traditional banking finance aspects. We've already talked to a couple of banks who already have these in place with projects like VastBank and their executives. They've been on our show before. Check out that video. You'll kind of understand what traditional finance is trying to do, because that's going to be the gateway drug to get to mass adoption. And to get into mass adoption, it starts to do exactly what I'm talking about, which is being able to handle the amount of mass adoption that could be rolling out. So think of this as getting into Silicon Valley in the 1990s. What players would you want to be in bed with? If you take a look at what Grayscale is doing, they're launching a diversified fund, leading the top smart contract networks in competition with Ethereum. This, of course, is Solana, Polkadot, Avalanche, Cardano, pretty much. But this fund is not going away. They are looking at this as a potential, and I would say this not necessarily as a backup, but I think what they're considering here is there's going to be a second player or maybe even a third player that's going to be in the game. And because of ETH's popularity and because of the 2.0 conversion and what we'll see, mass adoption will occur. We'll see a lot more equation. As I said, I think we'll start to see a lot more partnerships starting to form. The question is, which one of those layer ones will really become be the Batman to ETH's, or the Robin to ETH's Batman? That will be the question. I would lean in a little bit on, right now, a little bit on Avalanche. Maybe Algorand too is kind of an outlier there, just because of the science behind what Algorand is trying to do. Algorand, by the way, had been making some moves here recently. We'll talk about that in our top 20 token rundown for sure. But those would be the two I'd be kind of very seriously watching as we see this kind of play out. All right, ETH price is also hitting 3K as major crypto funds add over 110 million in Ethereum to the Lido staking protocol. This is just more bullishness that I think is really kind of pointing to the direction, but we will see a lot more. This was Three Arrows Capital staking at least 110 million worth of ETH into Lido's liquidity pools. That showcases on Nansen. Let me jump over to Nansen. You can kind of see Lido's position right here, holding out number one right here, 2.6. And then you also can see just kind of the overall active transactions and daily active addresses still continuing to climb over the years, all the way back here for ETH. So I think, again, and you see this volatility really happening between Jan 21 and 22, lots more stability. I think that's going to be especially when you look at the daily transactions, the opportunity for this growth right here that we've all been looking at and wondering of what that might look like, definitely starting to play into this for sure. All right, I want to jump into the last couple of things, and just as a warning, because remember, we do these market movers. The idea behind this is we want to give you some data, some insights, give you a full round picture of what the market is doing, but at the same time, it's not investment advice. This is a key thing that we do here for our own research, our own strategies. We share this free. It's completely out there to you guys. You can use some of our analytic tools for sentiment analysis, things of that nature. I'll show you one of those here in a second. But one story I wanted to jump to, it's not all roses, at least right now. We could see some high volatility on the horizon. This is coming over from Glassnode. And mainly what they're talking about is a couple of things. I wanted to jump down into this executive summary. Right now, it's mostly US and EU markets, which is where mostly the sales side is occurring. And then also you've got Bitcoin utilization and on-chain activity remains still pretty much in the bear market territory, but it is recovering. So that's a good thing, but it definitely has not seen that kind of thing. And then also the amount of BT supply absorbed during the current crackdown or drawdown is similar to the magnitude to the period after the March 2020 sell-off. So if you look back on that, that's another factor that you have to look at for potentially some volatility that could right now, because this is before ETH 2.0, could drag ETH 2.0 down with it, meaning Bitcoin. If we do see volatility, ETH will move with it. So just keep that in mind as you start to look at just kind of this 12-week price comparison. And this compares a lot with what we've seen in terms of the sentiment analysis as well. And I want to break out sentiment analysis on ETH real quick. I'll go over here to our stuff. So on our crypto power index, a couple of things you guys can do is get into our top crypto, which is our top selected coins that we will give you historical data. You'll also get like top 20, you get top 20 metaverse. But if we go into the top crypto, let me go back here because I want to show you something in the overall. Let's let that repaint. Yeah, so you can see the overall, and this is something really too, with Metaverse, we've seen it coming down, but it has stabilized a little bit. But the markets are starting to squeeze together right here, which is very interesting. You got DeFi coming up a little bit. You've got obviously altcoins sliding out just a little bit. The overall is still holding. And then you've got Ethereum starting to move up overall in comparison to what's happening in the space. Let me jump into the ETH chart for you real quick. We'll go to the top 10 crypto. And we are adding more tokens to this list. You guys will start to see a lot more jumping in on the sheet. Right now we have 10 in the group, but we are moving to 20 within the next couple of weeks, so you'll be able to see this over time. But what I want you to notice here is how Ethereum, really since the end of January, which we saw a lot of movement under what was happening in the overall market, starting to squeeze in, and now we're starting to see some movement on amplification. So you see amplification separated right here on ETH on March 14th. You also see it separating right here on sentiment, and it's fairly tight right there actually. But if you look at it right here, this is where it started to separate a little bit, and it started to come back in. And when I see amplification starting to make a move like this is usually an indicator for more price action. And that tells me, at least right now, in the short term, we could be seeing some movement, some additional movement on Ethereum. So right now we're hovering around $3,000 for Ethereum. So could we see it going up to maybe its near-term year-to-date high, which is around 33, 34? That could be in the cards here for with what ETH is doing. So you look at that compared to where Bitcoin also kind of starting to hover, but it's also trending up right now. So Bitcoin trending up, ETH starting to trend up right here, especially on amplification, which is one of the key things that I watch as we look at new weekly data as that comes out. Remember, we drop our CPI data on Mondays and again on Fridays for the weekend trading volume. But yesterday was this data. We are as I said, we are adding more coins into the roster. We'll have a handful of Metaverse tokens in there, some mid markets, and then some of the trending coins will probably. I know everybody has been asking for AAVE and Doge just to see historical. AAVE's such a young token, we'd have to do that more like a midday or an hourly chart to give you some recognition over a period of time. Anyway, make sure and just click the link below if you want access to the CPI. You can join. It's real simple and real easy. Also, if you're part of the Diamond Circle, that's the biggest thing because we give away a lot of this in our email. We also do giveaways. We're doing a giveaway out on our email this week. So I think it's on Friday this week. We send out an email to everybody in our Diamond Circle and we list the winners of the rewards we're giving away that week. And I think this week we're going to be giving away $100 ETH bags. So So be on the lookout for those because your name might be listed. All you have to do is respond to the email and then we get your address and send you back some goodies. All right, now if you guys are on the podcast, make sure and tune in over here on the YouTube channel. This is the place where you're going to get all this and so much more. You want to catch me? It's out on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.